Hello and welcome to this video. I am making this sort of a personal kind of update for people who are watchers, viewers, my audience, subscribers, whatever you like to call yourself, right? um, Probably have noticed I haven't put out content in a little while, maybe 3-5 weeks. I don't know. It's been definitely a month at least, I think, on BitChute and YouTube. The 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 thing I want to talk about here, and what I want to make this quick video kind of as is about integration and about pacing and about overwhelm and burnout, and how these great cycles of experience, observation, integration, acceptance, and moving on. And then a new experience, and then new observations, and then new acceptance, and new integration, and then new moving on. This sort of ascension cycle is eternal, just as we are, right? And that's why a lot of times I'll use the terms energy alchemists when I'm talking about humanity and about us as people, right? It never ceases to amaze me the newness of the lessons that come to me and the ways that I deal with them and choose to interact with them. And for me, I really wanted this channel and want my platform, like my website, my podcast, all these things that I do and I'm a part of, to share the content creation that I'm doing. I have always had a goal in mind and always had the intentions of service to others and to be sharing in order to assist and help and ease others in their struggles, to see that we're not alone, and to see that there's a way through, and there's bigger pictures, there's other ways to see things. I personally, have always felt that this is sort of my angle of approach, because I tend to see things differently. I've always been that kind of fringe outsider person who sees bigger picture and who sees things differently, kind of like outcast type of feeling for myself. And so I thought, what better way to be able to voice my opinion and to be able to be heard than to just do it, to create content, to write and record and share and speak. And sometimes that means I don't always know where I'm going, and I don't always have a plan, and I don't always make sense. And that, to me, is kind of the beauty in it, the uniqueness, the individuality, the flavor that you put on something. It's your technique. It's your little artistic compensation. Everybody has their own fingerprint to put on things, right? And I feel, and I have felt, that type of sharing, different ways to see things, my own personal way that I tend to connect dots, I felt like there's a value and a worth in that. And so I created these platforms to do that. One of the ways I feel is most helpful is that living example, that sharing honest truths. And being as honest with yourself and others as possible. And this brings me into kind of the concepts and the struggles that I am facing, that we all are facing, and kind of what I wanted to talk about quickly this morning in this video, this sort of personal update kind of thing. I wrote a blog, and I will share the link in case anybody is a reader and would like to look at it. It's the first blog I've wrote since like March. You know, I've been in that integration part of the cycle. And so a lot of times, the best ways that I found to serve myself, my shadows, my more low energy kind of time, you know, my more feminine sort of side, the way that I serve that is by allowing plenty of space, time, and acceptance in how long it takes me to get going again, or how long it takes the integration portions to really, you know, take a form, the pieces of the puzzle to even be wanting to be put together again, you know. There's great value in looking at individual pieces of the puzzle and examining them very closely and taking your time with that before you even start to try to find the corners and make the frame and fit the image to the pieces and fit it together tangibly with, you know. And so I just take a break when I need to and don't create content. And that has been a real source of comfort for me, because it creates this sort of self-love practice, I guess. So with that, with sharing that, obviously I'm speaking about myself, but to know for yourself that if you are in slumps, or you are in a writer's block, or a stagnation, or an apathetic kind of down periods, you know, it's perfectly within your means and within your positive self-care kind of modality to just allow yourself that rest and quiet and pause, you know. Before I went on this great pause, and before all of this, I've done a lot of blogs and talking about the cycle of death and of rebirth, and we had a huge theme of it with my weekly readings, and with tarot they gave us that beautiful theme of death to work with. And it's so organic and natural, the way that those lessons seeped in through my life and sort of puddled and then came to show themselves in April, at the end or the middle of April, sort of really telling me, well, yeah, you need to close the casket, you need to kind of climb into the vault here and die for a little while, you know, and have some peace and quiet, and go into that void to where you can allow yourself to step out of this individual first-person view for a while, the really boxed in 3D-ness of the person, of the self, and step out and get into the bigger picture, see the oneness, get into sort of that source creator mindset more. And sometimes, and a lot of times myself, you know, I'm speaking from direct experience and knowledge that I don't always pay attention to my cycles and of light and shadow work, and of where my energy fueling is at. And sometimes, you know, I feel like, oh, I can push it closer to empty. I can keep going. I have, you know, more energy. And before I know it, well, I'm on E, and I've depleted, you know, my sources. And that, I feel like, is when I get into a time like where I have to just completely shut everything down and totally focus on just being. And that in itself that whole state has its own lessons and epiphanies and workings and practices that come with that sort of state of stillness, of silence, of the observer role. And so I have so much building now that I have this finger in the dam. I was telling my friends who I hadn't talked with in a little while about this, feeling like I have the thumb in the dam, kind of everything's ready to explode out, and now I'm holding back, not, but this has been maybe the last week or two that I've had that kind of feeling. And deep within me, I'm getting so many insights and understandings and external confirmation that there's a different way to do that. There's a whole other perspective that I'm not seeing about this finger and the thumb, the dam, the wall, all the information behind it, and myself that I've missed before, and it's so much larger than life, so much larger than words, so much larger than me and what I can speak and put forth into, recognizable words that other people are going to actually hear and resonate with and get. So this kind of leads up into my major talking point in my example that I wish to share with. And I sort of let up and cleared some ground around this with the blog that I wrote, which is why I mentioned it earlier. And that really, I entitled Unspeakable Things, Part 2. Because I did a video all about things that are unspeakable already. If you are a subscriber, you probably saw that video. If you haven't, I'll put a link too, just in case you are interested in seeing it and in listening. It's so thought-provoking to think about this idea of unspeakable things. And then the two ways that I broke it down in that talk. And in the blog as well, I go on because in the video, I initially looked at it from one angle of perspective, more with more focus and attention, which was the more restricted version of unspeakable things. Things that are not unspeakable because we lack definition or we lack terminology to describe it, but unspeakable because a source of authority says, don't say that, because of X, Y, and Z. Whatever the reasons of may be, whether they are promoted as positive, good for all reasons, or promoted as just plain authoritative restriction, don't say that because I said so, that's bad, or it's against a law, or whatever. No matter the shading, if it's a restriction of a word that you do know, that you could speak aloud, that has context to it, and you don't say it for some reason, then that falls into the second category of restricted as unspeakable. And in the last video I did, I focused on that side of it because I was talking more about like archonic controls and the negative agenda and that kind of thing. The blog, I kind of flipped the coin, and I sort of looked at it from the other angle, which is the angle that I was curious to explore after the fact of that video. And I put that video a couple months ago probably. And obviously, in my own sort of workings and my own contemplations and things, I have sort of covered lots of ground all around before and after and away from that topic since then, but circling back to it this time in the blog, I wanted to sort of look at the other side of the coin, which was things that are unspeakable because we lack the verbiage, or because they're too big. They're too big for words. or for the language that we have, for us. Say for myself as an American and a classic average American, I don't speak any other languages. I have a mediocre knowledge of a couple of base phrases in more common languages. And I do, have a bit of a grasp of, root languages and the workings, the grammatical workings of language and stuff like that. But I don't actually speak any other languages, but I know enough to know that English and then American English has really been pigeonholed. And we lack a lot of the verbiage to explain things that are sort of more emotional, less tangible, less 3D, quote unquote. Other languages have more flair, have more romance to them, have more creativeness to them, have phrases to describe things that we just don't really have in sort of English, and especially Americanized English. And so some of the things that I'm talking about and bringing in, or some of the things I've been ruminating on, there might be sort of a phrase or a knowing of that recollection in another culture, and they might have like a term for it to pin the tail on the donkey, kind of. But I don't have that reference point, so I wouldn't, I will deem it as unspeakable right now. And that, as I'm talking about myself, I'm also, feel free to find parallels within the great other and within that more plural you, I guess, the great you, all of you. Because I think we all kind of go through the same things in different ways, the same building with different views, so to speak. And so some of the things that I struggle with or I'm contemplating on and I'm searching for words to describe, other people might definitely have gone through that, and I kind of address some of that stuff in the blog. And also at the end of that blog, I got into a couple of examples of paradox ponderings that I find myself circling around on. And, oh, my nose is itchy. Sorry. So I don't want to beat a dead horse here and go over things that I've been going over too much. But for people who haven't followed other things, or maybe, you don't follow my Telegram, you don't see blogs or whatever things that I share, podcasts, other references, maybe you just watch my BitChute videos or whatever. I just kind of want everybody to be able to be on the same page with where I am at. Because what I really am talking about and what I want to talk about is hard to explain. And it's one of those things that should you try to explain to someone who is not there yet, you could seem totally crazy. And I don't want to be I want to be understood, right? I don't want to be misunderstood, I guess, is kind of what I'm trying to say. And so I'm hoping that by kind of clearing the ground around these little tidbits that have led me up to now, that it'll be more easily understood. The thing with things that are unspeakable because they are undescribable is a lot of times when we go to describe them and explain them, to share them, they don't come out right, right? They don't sound as good. It's kind of like that you had to be there when you tell a joke or you try to explain something that was hilarious that happened between you and somebody else, and then a new person you try to explain that to, and it just doesn't even seem funny anymore, right? Or it lacks the whole like vibe that made it hilarious, and you had to be there is kind of the thing we say. Internal experiences, and in extension our entire lives as individuals, my role here as myself, as Allie, is you had to be there to get it. Every moment, every epiphany, every struggle, every finish line that is crossed, every race that's run, it's a you had to be there. And coming to terms with that has been a really deep working for me. Because there's something so deep in us, and I think it is very natural, very human, very organic, that seeks to be in the light. It seeks to be seen. It seeks to be witnessed, to be known and understood. And that is in itself infinite workings, in itself intangible and tangible. It's a paradox. It is a cycle in itself. It has a momentum to it. These polarities, these things that we can hold juxtaposition, sort of, it creates in itself its own momentum, its own inertia, its own conscious boundaries of energy, of thought energies, of this own little reality bubble that is. When these two are pulled apart, the contrasts and the comparisons create this experience, this knowing, this whole world of infinite possibilities that are able to be examined only by doing that, only by pulling apart, do you have the chance to do that? And that pulling apart, the dissection and examination, comparisons, it's a template, right? It's a tool. And that structuring can be applied again and again across every layering, across every perspective, perception, whatever that we encounter at all times. And holding that knowing within yourself and within your being is in itself an alchemizing practice of light and shadow work, of negative and positive polarities, and sharing, interaction, give and take, tug and pulling. And it takes practice and skill to learn it, just like riding a bike with training wheels, right? You have either one that you could sort of ride on these sides, this side of the training wheel or that side of the training wheel, but that's not the point. The point isn't to ride on either of them, but to have the knowing that they are there to catch you, and that they hold space and potentiality to run with you while you find the center point and you ride on just the bicycle wheels. That the space in between, the 0 point, coming back to that centering of the toroidal, and that's what we are, and that's what our universe is, that's what our earth is, that's what we all are. Lens by lens, by layer, as above, so below, each one fractally the same, yet individually different, unique, and with its purpose and directionality, its own unique frequency and vibration, right? Its own thumbprint. And that, again, circling back, that great knowing of this, and holding that potentiality within yourself, and knowing that you have the potentials to be 3D, solid, material driven, carnal, of the earth, you know, or you have this other chance to to rise higher, to be that more intangible, astral spirit, that thing that is not the body, that is not material, that is energy, electric, emotions, something of greater substance yet harder to touch, right? It's deeper, and that is to, you know, to be more of that higher mind, your higher self, to be in touch with God, to be spiritual, to have more conscious awareness, right? And to know that you can embody and do embody these separate pieces, to pull them apart and to examine between them, like I was saying before, right? That in itself, again, eternal working. It has infinite potentialities within there, and so much definition for you to find clarity on your own self. You know, and I'm speaking for myself as well. Doing this, the work is infinite and ever changing and ever evolving, and just another view from the same building. And so yes, and back to the unspeakable portion of this, and back to the struggling and pulling apart of being seen versus being misunderstood, or being ignored or discarded, and the great struggle between the two that we face. You know, the need and the desire and the want to be seen and be heard and to be influential and be admired and interact, versus the opposite side of the coin, which comes, you know, with the fear of being seen, the risks of rejection, being misunderstood, of being cast aside or ostracized, and what that could bring and feel like, and what that would mean about you. And by looking at that, and by pulling those great pieces apart and dissecting them with introspection, right? And asking ourselves, how would that make us feel, and why, and what would we do, and why, and not from a controlling, really strict way, but from a contemplative and a way of a data analysis of all pieces, versus, you know, really writing a list down of things that are going to definitely have to be a part of things. That ability to even do that, you know, is a whole other version of unspeakable things, and things that we have to go through on our own to do. And when you figure those little things out, and you do that kind of inner work with yourself, and you say, oh, that's why I do that, and that's why this, and this is this, and you start to connect the dots more and see, oh, that person's, you know, most likely doing this and this because they had a similar this to me, and oh, that makes so much more sense. Or, oh, well, my dad and went through X, Y, and Z with his dad, and so, oh my goodness, that's why he does this with me, and I didn't even think about it that way, but that's why I'm a dad that I am this way, you know, or a mother, or, you know, there is, as we begin to pull back the layers and do this kind of definitive work, we relate to others easily. We see the reflection with more clarity, right? And we see the problems and solutions with more clarity, for others and for ourselves, because we're all the same. We're all reflections of the same thing, right? And that's another that's another thing that I'm going to touch on and try to explain later. I think I'm going to try to make a visual of some kind. I'm not quite positive how to portray and explain this with more clarity, because it's like the phrase "we are one," and this is one thing that I can remember with clarity, and with hindsight sort of detail, with good recollection of this sort of working that I had at the very start of hearing something like "we are one" and kind of grasping and, okay, I get it. It's a surface level understanding. It's like you see the writing on the wall that's like "we are one," and you're like, yeah, I know, we're all one species or whatever. I see it. You can see every human looks relatively the same. You study anatomy or physiology, and then you really start to see, well, we're pretty much templated as the same structures. All of life's creations are, in fact. There's just great intelligence designed to that, right? Then, however, as that acceptance and knowing seeps into you and becomes a part of, like, your truth, sort of, you start to notice in the external world confirmation of that truth coming forth to you in unexplained, unexpected, different ways. And it creates new synapses, new connections between the neurons, new pathways of information, new connection points. The web grows of commonality and also of differentiality, right? Because thanks to our beautiful settings here, we immediately recognize, compare, and contrast information. And so as you take in that kind of knowing, okay, we are one, we're all one, then you start to get these weird things back. And sometimes, yeah, you share them with others and say, oh, yeah, I got that too. Yeah, I totally got that, yeah. Or they say, oh, I never looked at it that way, wow. And more things about we are one, say, will kind of you'll start to learn them, and you'll start to see it's so difficult to explain this. It's like adaptation, and it's sort of how hoarding happens, right? It's this function in the brain that we tend to ignore things that we already know about, or that are prominent in a field of sense that are sort of distracting to a cognitive function. We shut them off and we say, hey, we already see you. We don't need to pay attention to you anymore for right now. Your vision does this with your nose all the time. And if you choose to decide that you would see your nose within your vision, it will become very distracting to you, and you'll constantly see your nose down there. But because your brain says, oh, that's my nose, that structure there's my nose, they shut it off, and you really don't see it when you're looking around if you don't choose to. If you go to a barn ever and you're not a farm person, you go take your kids to a petting zoo or whatever, if you walk into a stable, you're going to smell that smell straight away. You're probably going to smell it outside, honestly. But if you stay in that stable for 15 minutes and you start doing other things and you're petting the animals, you're paying attention to your children, you're doing X, Y, and Z, before you know it, you're not going to smell that smell anymore. It's gone. It's not that the smell is dissipated, right? Your brain has turned off the smelling function, says, we don't smell that nasty smell anymore. We know it's there. Bye. Our learning brain, our understanding, does these same things. So the writing on the wall, we are one, is there on your wall, and you see it and you know it. And at first, when you first notice it, maybe when you first put the painting up there that says we are one, or a graffiti or whatever you want to envision it as, right? As that goes on the wall and says it there, it's very obvious the first time it's ever there. And for maybe weeks after, you notice it and you see it and you're all about it. But after a while, maybe you put other pictures up, or maybe the paint starts to seep in, or maybe, you draw other things around it, or the paint fades and it starts, get seeped into the wall even. Whatever the functions may be, or even it's just that it's there all the time and your brain does that function of just not looking at it that much anymore because you've sort of adapted to it, it's there. And it's not obvious. It fades into the background and you sort of forget about it. But then these things, like I said, external different ways of that oneness start coming into you, coming into your direct world. You start getting these little tidbits. And more obvious ones, the low-hanging fruit, so to speak, the common ones pop up first. And those are easily shareable. And others will be, yeah, I totally get that, yeah. And you start to be like, wow, we are one. Wow, it's even bigger than I even thought, And maybe you have a lot of common sources. We can give examples like this, common people who talk about the same sort of metaphysical theories and stuff, and maybe you share them with others, and they're, oh, I love that guy, or oh, I haven't seen that person, and oh, I saw that video, or oh, I've read that book, and oh, I've heard those teachings, oh, I read that scripture, oh, I've seen him analyze it in that way as well, and oh, have you, whatever. I could go on forever about these things. They come up very quickly, the low-hanging fruit. And then over time, those things also are absorbed in and become sort of the base layer and are into the background. And it's just a deeper knowledge of it. And then I found another deeper layer here where not so obvious things start coming up. You start sensing and seeing. Those things are harder to describe. Those things are way more individual and unique. And take longer to pull apart, like downloads, they're like bing, giant piece of knowledge that you have to pick away at and chew on and enjoy and let the juices really seep in to you and to be even able to tell what that experience was like and be able to wrap your head around what it is, a deeper knowing of that we are one. And then I found it's this new pulling apart of myself and my own struggles about being seen and being able to share and not being able to share, not being able to be seen, or fear of being misunderstood or whatever. Now that layer of that polarity of myself gets put upon this whole other side of knowledge, this whole other state of deeper understandings and deeper workings. And the pond sort of shrinks even more. And that creates a whole other type of working. And that within itself has really caused me to turn the lens inwards again, deeper, and to start to learn and integrate and accept that thing that I was talking about at the very start of this video. You had to be there, that kind of thing. To accept that within myself and to know that within my own being and within my own body vessel is an entire universe of itself, right? I am the great observer and the creator being of my body vessel, of the consciousness that lives within my organ systems and my cells and that totally microscopic version of life that happens on me and within me. Within each of us, we all own our own dominion, right? We are masters of our dominion. It's under our command within this space. And as you start to understand that, and then you can pull in the layers and have conversation within yourself, there comes this knowing that you are always seen and witnessed at most deepest levels always. And so the sharing isn't possible and isn't even the same. It's not even the same quality when we bring it into direct world or into the external world as that kind of sharing that happens within our inner world, within our own self, and the communications between our mind, body, and spirit, the infinite intelligences that run this and that coordinate it and that send all of our data and inputs and and everything through back to the server, back to the original, back to our real observer. And in extension, then again, we must remember that we are fractal source pieces of whole, source, God, and that same action, that same reporting back to the observer, to the whole of me, of my body vessel, and myself, I am that same mirrored reflection for God, and we all are. For higher consciousness, for our social memory complex as humanity as a whole, for our social, for the social memory complex of Earth and the being as a whole, and then for our entire outside of this, the infinite creator. Having that lead back and that deep anchoring connection is really, especially this time around with this new recycling that I'm coming through and this new rebirth that I'm really entering into and starting anew, afresh. The anchor is so strong, and the knowing of that unspeakable connection is such a strong flavor that the need to share it, the need to speak it out, the need to have others confirm, validate, comment on, critique, even, is really muted. It has been very sort of like when you let the slack out on a line, on a fishing line or whatever. It's really loose. It's there, and there's great value in it. And but instead of me feeling responsible for sharing that type of information as an individual to other individuals, I'm having such more, that's such a bad phrase, such more. I'm having a lot more, or I'm finding a lot more ease in leaving that slack loose and just saying, okay, whenever I'm called to, or whenever I have the specific correct time, then I'll share. And if I don't, I don't. And it's not pressing to get that external confirmation. It's not pressing to really wake others up or get them to see these sort of epiphanies and connections that I'm having, because they aren't going to even get it. You had to be there to get it. And so I'm trying to share jokes and punchlines that, the masses and mostly majority of people aren't going to get. And even people in my direct world aren't going to get, really, because they don't walk every step with me. They haven't, gone through all of the motions with me. Each one of us does that in our own way. And accepting that fully and letting go of the need to make others believe that's real, make others see their worth, make others live in theirs and respect mine, and have an external focus of what that kind of looks like. I've kind of lost the need for that, and pulled it back to always just focusing on me and on my moments and on, just being in the present. And so that has brought in me sort of more into the observer's role and helped me in this sort of shadow light work cycles that I find myself caught in, to be able to pull out of the paradoxes and that beating around the circle feeling that I get when I am really ruminating on paradoxes, when I'm doing pros and cons lists, when I'm looking at this side and then that side, and then flipping it over and understanding, the hero side and the evil geniuses side, seeing the dark and seeing the light, and then really forcing myself to see the middle picture of it all, and the real work of it, the dualistic role of it, and really being wrapped up in the paradoxes, really seeing them, and they're in the forefront of my vision and my experience of life. I'm starting to get the feeling and get the notion and the knowing that, wow, because I'm feeling those paradoxes so strongly, and because I'm really seeing extreme opposing pieces, pulling them apart and seeing them, it's because I understand there's a veil to pull apart. It's because I understand that there's a whole to work with here. and that it's not actually a dualistic thing, but a triad. It's a three. It's the whole coin, you know? And I've talked about that at the end of the blog, and I'm going to be talking about this more and more. And I've already talked about it previously in videos and in podcasts about the creator's mindset, the Trinity, the triad of creation. I called it in an infographic that I made months back. I'll reshare it in case people have missed it. And I made also another infographic about other varieties of the Great Holy Trinity. And I'll share that as well. But yeah, this is a deeper or a more clear view of all of that information and those downloads that I got a while back on that kind of working. But now I'm really seeing it. And this is the other thing, and I'm going to close with this because I've already been talking for 45 minutes. This is the thing about the writing on the wall, right? Now, come back to it. Now that writing has been there, the We Are One has been there for so long. I've done all this integration work. I've sent it out. I've had integration work out in the external, which has turned me to do more integration work in the internal world. And that has brought in a new higher sight and complete new understandings and workings to the original We Are One phrase that I started working on. So now, in my life and in my personal being, I have such greater conscious awareness and more clarity around that concept of We Are One. When I turn my focus back to that painting of We Are One on my wall, or the graffiti or whatever, I am able to see it. The same thing that was there before, that's always been there, that same beautiful painting that's always been there, I now see it with more clarity. Say like before, you had poor vision, maybe you didn't have 20/20 vision. And by doing all that work that I was doing and saying all these integrations and all this many work over weeks, months, years, it's like putting on a pair of glasses when you look back at that painting, and you can see it with 20/20 vision now. And you say, wow, I didn't see that before. That was blurry. That didn't make sense. That looked like it bled into that. And I really can see the gradients, the grains in the wall. I can really see, you know, the drippings of this and that, or whatever the case might be, things you didn't see before that you see now. And just know, because before I would think to myself, oh, I have 20/20 vision now. I'm good. I know about that. Never have to look at that again. But that's not the case whatsoever. This is an eternal workings. And now with that 20/20 vision and your glasses on, so to speak, you need to look out and wait and integrate. And then you will see out in the external world now more clearly. And more things will come up, more solutions, more catalysts, more deeper understandings will come to you at this new clarity level. And that will cause new external workings, you know, that you will have to turn internally, and then that will upgrade your vision yet again. And now you'll have like, you know, supersonic great like eagle vision when you look back at that, and then you'll see something that you never expected again and again and again. And I'm going to close with, don't let that deplete your energy. Don't let that look at you and tire you. Don't allow it to be an Everest that you could never climb. Know that anchor, that deep understandings that you're getting is fuel to your fire, your eternal flame, your energy, your toroidal is gaining in potential power while doing this work. And so you'll never be met with mountains. You'll never be met with visions that you're not ready for, that you aren't, that your muscles aren't toned enough to make and get you through. Because that's what we're here to do. That's our great purpose on our eternal trip and journey back to original source, back to God, to true oneness, right? So yeah, I'm going to leave it there with this sort of welcome back message and personal insights of where I've been and sort of the footsteps I've taken. I hope that if you're facing similar recycling fears, if you're facing you know, depletion of energy, or feeling like you don't want to keep going, or feeling like, oh, this rebirth is tiresome, know that you're not alone, and know that in admitting that and seeing that and understanding others are out there, there's strength in that. And I have your back as you have my back. Thank you for your beautiful contribution to our collective, and thank you so much for taking time to listen and witness mine. I really appreciate all of you out there as deeply as I appreciate myself. So thank you so much. and I hope that you'll check in next time. I can't say exactly when my next video will be, but I do think this week I will get back into my Friday Saints and Angels Oracle card readings. I might even do sort of a catch-up tarot reading for our theme for May, and sort of break into that. The halfway mark is here, so perhaps it's a good time to do that. You can check back at my channel, or find me on Telegram. A. Marie Speaks over there if you're interested in finding those live. Or, of course, you can always find my website. I have tons of information, all types of things on my podcast, and even just tools, other reference tips from people who I admire and I follow. If you're interested in finding some learning tidbits in your free time, you can check out the tools tab at amariespeaks.com, and you'll find a plethora of that kind of stuff, videos and books and informational sources of all types. So yeah, I hope you'll enjoy those, and I hope you will tune in to me next time. I hope you have a beautiful day or evening wherever in the world you are. Thank you again for your beautiful service to our collective, and thank you for witnessing mine. I'll see you next time.